ladies and gentlemen, as the title of this video implies, I am going to attempt to make a belt grinder. I came across a set of plans on YouTube where a gentleman had already done the same thing, and then he sold these plans. Jers Woodshop at gmail.com. I purchased these on his Etsy marketplace. I'll put a link in the video here. Definitely a fantastic tutorial on building his build of the grinder. I'm going to make some changes to the patterns. I've already drawn up some of the patterns, or most of the patterns, in CAD. So some of that's going to get changed. As you can see here, I've assembled some of the components already. 2 horsepower TEFC motor. I have a controller here, VFD. This is an import piece, but I think it'll work fine for the project. I've already purchased a set of wheels that I'm going to build the chassis around, and I'm hoping to cut most of the chassis pieces on the plasma cutter. This is 3/8 material, hot rolled steel, rusts up nicely when you don't wipe it down. Clean them up on the mill or manually. A lot of these smaller pieces would be perfect if a guy just had a 2x72 belt grinder. The chassis, as well as the accessories, the plate and the wheels, etc., were all built around this 1.5-inch tool steel. I'm going to show you some of the finished pieces. These have been cleaned up either on the grinder, the hand grinder, on the mill, or as is. So what I did is change the design to incorporate the legs with this tab design. You can kind of see how that jigsaws together there. I've left enough space in here that we should be able to weld throughout and avoid any warpage. This 3/8 material should only need a little bit of penetration across the top here to keep this square the way it's all keyed in here. Should be able to get some nice registration welds on the inside here. I'm going to try and tack this up, probably use a few thou shim on the inside here. I saw a great tip where a guy was using razor blades. I like that idea, just to glue them along the inside there, and then when you clamp down, remove the whole buck, as it were. You'll have enough clearance. I think I'm going to try that. Break out the TIG and try and get a nice first tack, avoid any distortion, and then weld this thing up. So I finished the first slip tube, TIG welded the whole thing, You can see I ground it smooth for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted a smooth surface here to weld some of those tabs on that create the tilting mechanism, and secondly, to avoid the court of public opinion. Some of the welds did have some porosity in here. I believe that's due more to my setup. The old timer that taught me how to weld always said, when you're TIG welding, the key is clean, clean, clean. For the longest time I thought he meant personal hygiene, but I realize now it's the material, the filler wire, etc. It's got to be perfect, or you get those gas bubbles that create that porosity. But it's a good clean weld, good penetration. The tool steel slips in and out of it, so I think that's going to work. I'm going to try and do the same on this second one. Okay, I got the second tube fusion welded here. No filler rod, just some tacks. Pulled the tool steel out, removed the shims. Went a little easier than last time. Maybe you'll notice on this weld I ground back the mill scale. I think that was a big part of the reason for the porosity on those last welds is the mill scale melt through. But you can see I've got an even gap along here on most of these fitments. I'm going to try and come in here and just lay a nice deep bead. I'll try and rotate around here to avoid any distortion. We got plenty of movement in here, but I certainly don't want to warp or bend this. This tube is the one that's going to get the most action, for lack of a better term. Okay, I've laid out the hinge here after welding up the two tubes. The hinge looks kind of complicated, but it's actually two simple hinges here. This one has a tensioning plate that spins around this radius, so you can lock it in place vertically or horizontally. You can see, maybe you can't, that I switched my gas lens out. I changed from the number 7 short to 7 long. Hopefully without a lens in there, I'll still be able to cover this weld up and get some fusion tacks in here. I'll probably go back with the 7 to really weld it with filler, but I have this I'm hoping I can get in here and get in those tight spots. Somebody accuse you of being a welder, you make welds like that. Okay, finished up the welds on the hinge as well as the tensioning radius. I got it clamped down to the bench here. You can see how the mechanism moves from horizontal to vertical. Need to install some kind of a tensioning device here that won't interfere with the hinge proper. I was hoping to use these 3/8 handles, but the ability for them to tension down here doesn't have a huge clamping surface on the end. So I'm working on that. I'll find something. The plans call for a bolt to go through the back, welded flush, and then tighten a nut against here, which would probably be the best way to draw that together, but I guess we'll see. I like the idea of being able to loosen and tighten it just a quarter or half turn with that handle, but we will see. So the next steps are assemble the plate back here that holds the motor, and then the system that holds the tensioners. So more to come.